And once again, today's devotion comes a couple blocks from my home, and in the background, we once again have our same set of sheep friends. We've been looking at the verse in John 10 this week, where Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, and my sheep know my voice. And we've been talking about how do we cultivate practices in our lives to hear his voice. And we have looked at memorizing scripture. We've looked at things like mind mapping that we have here. We have looked at prayer. And today I want to talk about turning all of this from a passage into serving. But before I do that, there is a tender scene in the book of John at the end, John 21, where Peter has denied Christ after Jesus told him he would, and Peter denied it. But sure enough, Jesus was right. Peter denied him. And Jesus now is in the process of restoring him. And on the beach, Jesus approaches Peter and he says, Peter, do you love me more than these? And Peter says, yes, Lord, you know I love you. He says, well, then feed my sheep. Jesus says, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, I do. He says, feed my sheep. Then a third time, Jesus says, Peter, do you love me? And Peter was cut to the heart because he remembered his denial of Christ. But Jesus still said, Peter, feed my sheep. Peter failed. Peter let Christ down. And yet this did not disqualify him from serving. Instead, Jesus was basically telling Peter, I want you to plunge your failures into my grace. Yes, you failed, but I am going to use you as a leader to feed my sheep. Now, we are not all Peter. We are not all pastors, but we all have a unique opportunity to serve and to feed sheep. And so my encouragement, going back to kind of the passage we've been looking at in Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 through 3, is this. After you look at scripture and do this little mind map and pray through it, what are things that stand out as far as ways that we can serve? Serving is a way that we cultivate hearing the voice of our good shepherd. So knowing that our lives are hidden with Christ in God, that reminds us we are part of his body. And part of his body is we get the opportunity to serve. And that could be making a phone call to a relative, to someone who's isolated. It could be making a grocery run, but it could be any number of things as we could anticipate coming up. But my encouragement as we wrap up these set of devotions is to take this opportunity as things have slowed down, put spiritual practices in our lives that can really help us cultivate the voice of our good shepherd.